Hello, everyone. I am live here with Anne Schlafly. So honored to be with her. The daughter of Phyllis Schlafly, an incredible woman who I knew a lot about, but I didn't know a lot about Anne. So super excited to have you joining us here. This is Anne Schlafly Cori. She is the chairman of Eagle Forum, which is an organization founded by her mother. I don't know what year, Anne will have to tell us. It kind of in the heat of battle with the ERA. It's a volunteer organization made up predominantly of women across the country who want to affect legislation around the family. All right, Anne, welcome to the Mission Driven Mom. So excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show. I am, the nature of families is such you want to choose your parents well. And luckily I got a lucky set of parents, and I'm the youngest of 6 children. And my mother was an extraordinary woman. And it is an honor for me to work in the organization that she founded and to work side by side with the women who worked with her for so many decades. She was an inspiration and a role model. And I'm happy to tell the real and true story of Phyllis Schlafly.
Awesome. Oh, so happy to have you. First of all, I just wanted to hear a little bit about your childhood. What was it like growing up?
It was exciting. It was tremendously exciting.
That's
because
awesome.
I grew up in the heat of battle in the 1970s when the Equal Rights Amendment was the dominant issue, cultural issue across the country, and widely debated and talked about during that time. And my mother did everything from her home office. She didn't go out anywhere to an office. She worked from home, which meant that our phone rang from morning till night with calls from supporters or the media or just anybody. Part of her success was that she always made herself available. And I think it's kind of amazing, but our phone number was always in the phone book and we were always reachable. And she always wanted to answer the phone and talk to people. And that's what my childhood was this excitement of being engaged in the political battle.
Wow. So I know that I've watched several interviews with her and things about her. And one of the things that she talked a lot about, which I think is so marvelous, is that when she had her children, she came home full time, she nursed her babies, she spent time with them. I know a lot of the moms are wondering what were like your daily routines? What did it look like day to day for you?
Well, my mother always said that women can have it all, just not all at the same time. And so she spent, in the 50s and 60s, she was at home raising her children, and then became very actively involved in the 70s. And as the caboose in the family, I saw that more up front than any of my siblings on it. But as she kept trying to say to people who said, well, why are you speechifying on how women should be at home? She would answer, well, children do grow up and they do have lives of their own. I can't exactly be home with them when they're off at college.
Yes. It's interesting too, like at the Mission Driven Mom, we have quite a few like empty nesters. And one of the things they love about the program is it reignites their excitement for what they're going to do now that kids are grown and gives them new focus and direction. So
there is. And if you care about the direction of our country, and if you care about the type of country that your children and grandchildren will live in, then you should be involved and engaged. And the other thing that my mother always pushed was this concept as homemakers as policymakers. Just because you're living and working in the home, and of course she said all women work, because if you're a mother, you work. So the idea of non-working women is irrelevant. It doesn't
Yep.
exist. All
Yep.
all mothers work.
Yep.
And that if you live and work in the home, that's no reason for you not to be engaged in what's happening outside the home.
Yeah. I talk to moms a lot about using their gifts to bless their community and bringing their children with them and
Yeah.
modeling that community effort
Mm-hmm.
with their children so their children can see it. So what was your relationship like with your mother?
My mother was a strong and dominant woman.
Yes. You just need 2 minutes.
You know, she loved to talk, and
yes,
she wanted people to listen.
Yeah.
But I always had a very good relationship with my mother. I think,
wonderful.
And I think anybody from a large family
Yeah.
understands that the experience of the youngest in the child rearing is often very different from the experience of the older children.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm sure that the older children always think that the youngest is getting away with murder.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So
spoiled.
Oh, of course.
Yep.
But you know what? I reveled in it, and I used it to my advantage. And it's the best place to be.
Did you ever get to accompany her places or meet people she was working with?
I did. Oh,
What's a favorite memory from that?
Well, in the Equal Rights Amendment battle, it was fought over in a number of states, but the hottest state of all was Illinois, where it was voted on every single year for 10 years.
Oh my goodness.
And we grew up in Illinois, and the state capitol was a 2.5-hour drive from our house. So I many times went with my mother to the state capitol in Springfield, Illinois, to talk to legislators or to have rallies on the amendment. And even once I testified in front of the state legislature when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
There was something going on all the time. And so that was a regular trip that we took together.
Wow. Oh, that's incredible. Tell me about, simply because we're not affiliated with any particular religion, but we're a God-centered organization. So I wondered a little bit about if you could tell us about your mother's and your family's relationship to God, your parents' relationship with each other, the role that faith played in your family and your home.
Excellent question, because a lot of people have asked me, and certainly asked my mother throughout her life, of effectively, why are you doing what you do?
Yeah.
And everything that she did started because of her faith in God and Jesus Christ. It motivated her. It was the core. It was why she did what she did, because she felt that these were fundamental truths that needed to be expressed in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And these truths formed her political beliefs. Now, the most interesting thing about her and her organization is that most organizations divide along religious lines.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the various Christian denominations don't necessarily get together in the same organization.
Yeah.
In fact, some denominations feel that other denominations are not valid.
Yeah.
And my mother was a Roman Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
but the majority of her followers were evangelical Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And so that alone was a fundamental difference of forming an organization that brought together people who didn't agree on basic issues, but agreed on political issues.
Yeah.
And one of the great lines Phyllis Schlafly would say at her conferences is, you may believe that the person you're sitting next to will not be saved, but you're going to work together on this issue.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I had another question. I would love for you to tell us for just a minute about her education. We're an educational organization. We talk a lot about the importance of self-education, especially in classics and great works, how they elevate us. How did she discover what her gifts were and decide where she wanted to head educationally, and what her education and kind of preparation for this life's work? How did that happen?
She believed firmly and strongly that women should and ought to be educated, and she
Mhm.
pushed education throughout her life. She was the daughter of a librarian who had an advanced degree. I think even her grandmother had a college degree. She came from a family that believed in educating women.
Mhm.
And there was never a doubt that she would be well educated.
Mhm.
So but she did not come from any kind of financial security.
Mhm.
And so when she went to college, she had to work her way through college,
Oh,
and she
wow.
worked a full-time manual labor job to get her college degree. She worked as a testing ammunition in a small
Oh
arms
my goodness.
during World
Wow.
War II.
Wow.
And then she got a scholarship to go to Harvard to get her master's in political science. Uh, it, Now, interestingly, it was many years later, she was in the political sphere. She was debating and arguing on the Equal Rights Amendment. And one of the key proponents of the Equal Rights Amendment was a senator from Indiana named Birch Bayh. And he said, I refuse to debate Phyllis Schlafly because she does not have a law degree. So my mother went to law school.
I remember one of the interviews, her saying that. I think it was one with Betty Friedan, and she was like, well, I'm in law school. I couldn't tell if she was in law school at the time,
Mhm.
or if she had done it like previously while, I don't know,
She
raising her
went to law
family.
school in her 50s.
Oh, okay. So it was in
Yeah,
that time period.
it was in that time period, and it was, and she wanted to be able to say, yes, I do have the legal training to argue these issues. So she
Wow.
never stopped learning, and nor did she ever think that women should stop educating themselves.
Yeah. What did she ever tell you specifically what attracted her about political science?
Well, it's actually a funny story because you see, she had this job at the small arms factory, and because of her schedule there, the classes that fit for her to go to a college were political science classes. That's what determined the classes
Oh.
she took, was that it fit in with her work schedule. And then once she started
Oh.
to take the classes, she really became quite interested in the topic.
Wow. Just a strange twist of fate. So there are 6 children. Um, did she always want a big family?
Well, I think in the beginning, I don't know. She once told me that she came from a family of 2. Her husband came from a family of 4. Well, maybe those were good numbers, but if you're having a good marriage and you're having fun, things just happen.
Oh, that's adorable. So
And
tell,
at one point she said, "Well, wouldn't it have been fun if I had had twice as many children?" I mean, she loved me.
oh, so so what about your parents' relationship? How did they get along? How did they work with each other? How did he feel about the work she was involved in?
I think this is critical. My mother, Phyllis Schlafly, could not have done what she did if there were not Fred Schlafly, because Fred Schlafly supported her in the 4 crucial ways: financially, emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually. They were on the same page. And, she took a lot of slings and arrows
Oh,
towards getting out into the public. And
yeah.
what made it okay is that she would come back home to this unbelievable security, that kind of security that a good marriage can give, where it doesn't matter what happens in the world because you are safe with your husband.
And that's so beautiful. One of the things, Anne, honestly, I was watching the trailer for the miniseries, and there's that moment, I don't know, maybe 2/3 in, where she comes in and there's like a fight between them, and he's like, what are you doing? And this is, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, kind of attacks her. And I thought, I'm asking Anne about that specifically because I bet that's not what went on.
It's important to remember that the show that FX and Hulu are putting on later on this month is fictional. They have made it up. And know that no scene of like that ever happened between my parents. They are trying to make it into a contentious marriage and to I get the impression they almost want to make it in that it was a Pygmalion kind of situation that
Mhm.
Fred, pushed Phyllis out to do
Mhm.
these things out there.
Yeah.
Nothing could be further from the truth. They were very much in agreement in on all issues,
Mhm.
and they loved debating and talking about the issues with each
Mhm.
other. They Fred was never more happy than when his buttons would burst, when she would be on the national media proclaiming the views, because he was always so proud of her.
Mhm.
We grew up in a small town in Illinois, and
Mhm.
so the local newspaper, they never, when she was in the news, they
Mhm.
never said Schlafly or Phyllis Schlafly. They always just said Phyllis, because everybody knew who she was talking about. And because of that, in our small town, my father, who was a lawyer, a prominent lawyer in the town, he was always known as Mr. Phyllis. But it didn't
Ah,
bother him in the bit. He thought it was great.
well, that's adorable. It just made me think too, that was probably a really important and helpful training ground for her to have those debates with him and to talk them through with a man so intelligent and so well prepared to understand it for himself, which armed her. And it is a fight that really only a woman could have fought. It was a woman's battle. And there, was 100 times more powerful for her to be on the stage next to women
Yes,
saying this is what women want and this is what they believe, and I represent a large part of the population that you're ignoring.
that's exactly right. And that's why her message resonated, is because
Yeah.
she represented women who had been silent and hadn't talked about these issues, and that the elite women who were pushing the Equal Rights Amendment, they tend to dismiss and discount their views and their life choices.
Yeah. I remember watching a documentary on the feminist movement, and of course the feminine mystique, and the I can't remember the formal name that they called it, but basically the book clubs that formed, and women reading and discussing this. And it's so fascinating because it's portrayed as if it just permeated every home, and every woman in America read that book and identified with every sentence and knew that it was absolutely true, that they'd always felt that way. And it's really all the other women that Phyllis was representing are just dismissed in those discussions, as if
Well,
there weren't anyone that read it and felt uncomfortable or didn't agree.
what Betty Friedan, who is the author of The Feminine Mystique and the godmother of the
Yeah.
feminist
Yes.
revolution,
Yeah.
what she described home as a comfortable concentration camp. And I
Yeah.
think for those of us who have a home, maintain a home, try to build a loving home, concentration camp is not what it is. It's a sanctuary.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the ERA portion of it. So I know that she had even run for office before she started having children, but wasn't elected. And they
Well, not
started
quite. She ran for Congress twice, in 1972 and 1970. We live in Southern
Oh,
Illinois,
that was after. Okay.
which was a heavily Democratic area.
Right.
She ran as a Republican, and
Right.
I think both political runs were long shots.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why. I got the impression from the way one of them was stated that it was like right out of college that she ran. But anyway, so May, so she's raising her children, and then at some point, um, she wrote that first book. I don't have the name of it in
The name
front
of the
of me.
first book she wrote is called A Choice Not an Echo.
That's right, A Choice Not an Echo. What caused her to write that book and begin to, because I feel like that book kind of really, I think she already knew some important people from things that she did before and through her husband and everything, but it seemed like from what I researched that book was a beginning catalyst for what came after.
It made a name for herself.
Okay.
And what happened is that she had been active in Republican Party circles, and she
Okay.
had worked for the Republican women's organizations,
Mhm.
and because of that, she was giving speeches and going to events for Republican women, who of course are really the worker bees of party politics. They're the ones who stuff the envelopes and knock on the doors and try to get candidates elected. And she was quite actively involved in that. And after President John Kennedy was assassinated, it suddenly seemed to be not not a good idea to give red meat political speeches. That wasn't the mood of the country. No one wanted to talk about, they wanted a more a speech that wasn't so attacking.
Mhm.
So she then formulated a speech, which was the history of the Republican Party conventions and how nominees are selected.
Mhm.
And that speech became quite popular and interesting. And then she packaged it up in a book called The Choice, Not an Echo.
That's how it became.
And so it
Got
described what she said, which was a cabal of the movers and shakers who select the nominees in the smoke-filled rooms,
Mhm.
as opposed to the people getting the choice they want. Thus, a choice, not an echo. And an echo would be the same old tired candidates that we've heard before, who are losers and not winners. So she, when she packaged that book up in 1964, there was a candidate that she was supporting named Goldwater, and
Oh,
because
that's
of
right. I remember that.
interest in that, the book sold heavily. And was considered quite influential in some of the primaries, going for choosing Goldwater over Rockefeller.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then I remember there was something about someone approached her, I can't remember her name, to help him write books on like military strategy or something like that. Why did he approach her? How did that come about?
Well, in the 1950s, the crucial issue facing the United States of America was the threat of communism and the interest of the Soviet Union in expanding its dominion.
Right.
And she and my father really fought very heavily against communism, and they fought against communism from a religious and faith-based opposition, that communism was godless and communism did not allow for faith. Or, if you believed in communism, you couldn't believe in anything else.
Exactly.
So she because of her fight against communism, she became interested in the military defenses of the United States in the efforts to repel such an attack if it were ever to happen. And so she became quite well versed in military issues concerning the U.S. Armed Forces.
Right.
So this retired admiral joined with her, and they co-authored, I think, 5 or 6 books on the military in the United States in the late 60s and early 70s, including an 800-page book on what the Secretary of State at the time, Henry Kissinger, had done, because she believed that Kissinger was gutting the military as opposed to protecting Americans. And it's interesting because her longstanding interest in military and the competency of our armed forces came together with her view of the family and opposition to the Equal Rights Amendment, because her most powerful argument was that ERA would force the drafting of women and force putting women on the combat front lines. So it does 2 things. It harms women, harms the mothers who have to leave their babies and go off and fight wars. And it also harms the military effectiveness of our armed forces if we have to have women on the front lines. As she liked to say, there's no army we're going to fight where they have women on the front lines.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot in recent years as that's become more prevalent. And one of the things that I've also thought about, I'm sure she thought about this too, is what it does to the men that are trying to fight side by side with those women, because it is their nature to be protective and they're
Yeah.
not going to be able to
Mhm.
fight alongside a woman in the same way that they would a man. It's just contrary to
Human nature.
human nature.
Because
It just is how they interact, and they
as
just
she
can't
said,
interact with women on the front the way that they can with men with men, and it weakens their position to do what they need to do in battle, for sure.
no question.
Yeah.
And she always felt that feminism would seek to redefine human nature and reorder human nature. And ultimately, you cannot redefine the biological differences between men and women.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So give us then a little bit of a timeline. She's written a Choice, Not an Echo. She's worked on military tactics. She's fighting communism. And somewhere in all of this, we've got the Phyllis Schlafly report, Eagle Forum, and the fight for the ERA. So what's that timeline look like, and how did she get to the point where she was actively fighting the Equal Rights Amendment?
The Equal Rights Amendment was introduced and passed in 1972 by both the House and the Senate. And the way constitutional amendments work, they need a supermajority of Congress and a supermajority of the states in order to be put into the Constitution.
Uh-huh.
And in 1972, there was at the cultural moment, there was just this steamroller of passing things to open up and change, and equality was a buzzword at the time, and everybody wanted to get on board with the equality buzzword. So it passed with virtually no opposition Congress, and then got sent out to the states. And my mother, wasn't paying attention to it. And somebody, I think she tells me the story that somebody called her up and said, just read up about it. Trust me, you'll be opposed to it. So she read about it. She started to realize the implications, and then she built up, to fight it. Now, by the time she started to lead an opposition to it, it had already passed 30 states, and it only needed 38. So she had her work cut out for her, but what it is, the thing is about, if you say equality of rights, who can be against that? It's you have to take the time to explain and educate and learn about it, to understand the harms of it, because the gut reaction is to say, yeah, I'm for it, but so it took a number of years to explain and say, this is a bad deal for women. So it slowed down, and then states started to rescind their previous ratification of ERA. So by the time 1979 rolled around, which was the expiration, ERA only they got 35 states to ratify and 5 states that had rescinded.
So at what point in that did she become really active in the fight? Like, was some of that rescinding happening because of her work?
Yes, she was pushing the rescissions. Absolutely.
Okay.
She would get women motivated in the states to lobby their state legislators, and she was very proud of the states that rescinded. That happened because of the work of her volunteer Eagles in those states.
So the Eagle Forum was originally founded specifically to rally forces to work against the Equal Rights Amendment?
Well, in 1972, there was just this loose organization, not really an organization, loose group called Stop ERA. And then by 1974, she and her Eagles realized that they needed to formalize the structure of the organization to have something that can not only fight ERA, but be engaged on all the issues that were affecting of the day. So Eagle Forum was legally incorporated in 1975.
Got it. I remember, I wish I would have written it down, but she said in one video that I watched with her that the reason that it's called Eagles Forum is based on a verse in Isaiah.
Yes.
I think.
I
can't remember.
Mount up as eagles.
That's right.
And they shall not be weary, they shall not faint. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I remember when she said that. It was just so beautiful. So I know that many of our moms are interested in better understanding. And we have watched a couple videos in the group throughout the week, and we've been chatting, and they've been posting questions. But what were some of the specifics that she was? We know that she was clarifying that it would very well put women on the front. So what were some of the other reasons that she felt that the Equal Rights Amendment was so harmful to women?
Well, the Equal Rights Amendment does not put women in the Constitution. It puts sex in the Constitution. And sex has a lot of different definitions. And because ERA does not recognize any distinction or have any exceptions on account of sex, it would make sex interchangeable in every situation. Men and women would be interchangeable in every situation. And of course, as we know today, sex has a lot of other definitions than people were talking about in the 1970s. I think there are things today that would have been unimaginable in the 1970s. But it's important to remember that in 1973, the Supreme Court ruled in Roe v. Wade on abortion. Yeah. And right from that moment, my mother saw that ERA would be another way of putting abortion into the Constitution, because if you can't make any distinction on the basis of sex, well, then you can't say that some medical procedures are treated differently from other medical procedures, i.e. taxpayer paid abortion. And in fact, both New Mexico and Connecticut, which have state ERAs with similar language as to the national ERA, the state Supreme Courts have ruled that the states must pay for abortions in those states. So you get these kinds of other issues that you might call them, whether they're the intended or unintended consequences of the proponents, they weren't talked about as important issues until my mother brought them up, because ERA was attempted to be sold as this feel-good amendment that women would feel that they were now represented in the Constitution, which is not the case. But it would have tremendous harms to women because then and I think there's something like 800 different laws that make a distinction on the basis of women and men that are done for good biological and protection reasons for women, like workplace accommodation for pregnant women. I mean, laws that nobody disagrees with, they would be overturned under such an amendment.
Wow. So what... I remember there was, and I can't remember if it was the Houston rally.
Yes, in 1977.
It seems like that's the one that she talked specifically about praying that she could get 1,000 women there.
20,000 women.
It must have been a different one. It must have been an earlier rally then.
Oh, the 1,000 women was in Springfield, Illinois.
Yeah.
That was 1975.
It was an early one. That's right. And she prayed specifically to get 1,000 people there because she felt that would build excitement and support and momentum and help the outsiders see how serious the movement was and how, well populated it was already. And
I think it's important to realize that my mother never held any position in government or in
that's true.
Or in in any kind of business. She never held a position. She lives in a small town in the middle of the country in flyover land. And her opposition in 1975 were 3 presidents, all the media, both the Republican and the Democratic Party platforms were fully in favor of the Equal Rights Amendment. And it was seen as a fait accompli, that this is what should be done. And so just from her home in a small town, she was able to organize first 1,000 people in Springfield, Illinois, and then 20,000 in Houston, Texas, to counter the government-funded rally that they were having in Houston, the International Year of the Women's Conference. So these were rather remarkable, but they happened because her message resonated. They
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened if she wasn't speaking truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Did your mother ever tell you what she was most proud of or felt was the most important contribution she'd made?
Her 6 children.
Mm. I remember her talking about one of the things I just absolutely loved that she said in one interview was that nothing she ever accomplished outside her home basically was as marvelous as what she accomplished in it, and that it was no more glorious or joyful to lead rallies than it was to bathe her children.
Yes.
And oh, that was just so beautiful.
Because if you realize she did the rallies outside because of her interest in her children's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, and maybe you have more to say, I'm not sure, but I would love for you to just tell us some things that you know about Mrs. America that you feel are being portrayed wrongly that we should look out for.
So this is a fictional drama that's put together starring Cate Blanchett, who is an accomplished actress as my mother. She gets the hair and the makeup and the clothing right. She looks good. I have
She did look a lot like her actually when I was watching the trailer.
But what she misses, she doesn't have the warmth. She plays her cold, cruel, calculating. And that misses the whole thing, because you cannot be an inspirational role model if you are cold, cruel, and calculating. And she was a role model and an inspiration and a leader of women. Yeah. Women followed her. Women were devoted to her. Yeah. But the way she is portrayed in this fictional drama, and they do have a message and agenda. The writers and producers have said they disagreed with what her work was, and they want to do this in order so they can show her and paint her as some kind of monster, and that we made this terrible mistake in the 1970s and we need to rectify it. I mean, that is their purpose in this show. And so to that end, you know, she's portrayed as all on one side, and then you have all these interesting other people, women on the other side who are trying to battle her. So I'm afraid that some of the liberties that they're taking, and the problem is with Hollywood is that, you know, when their work lasts forever. So I can, you know, because it'll always be there and always accessible to people, and people won't all, you know, understand to go to the truth. But they miss getting it why she was successful, because if they misinterpret the beauty of her marriage or the strength of her convictions or the devotedness of her Eagle volunteer women, well, then they misunderstanding why she was successful.
Yeah. Yeah. So important.
And one of the things I think that is important on my mother's career is she very much believed that leaders were made, not born, and that anybody could be a leader. Yeah. And she worked hard in promoting and advising and helping the women coming along with her. I mean, for example, you know, and this happened many times when someone would, you know, get really involved in a particular issue, you know, my mother would then encourage that woman to start her own organization just to do that issue and then work in collaboration with her. So that kind of helping is, you know, that's what makes for a successful movement, when you can duplicate yourself.
Yeah. Wow. That's wonderful. What is one thing you want people to remember about your mother?
I think anyone can be a success, and that anyone can achieve what they want. And they don't have to rely on somebody else to give it to them. You can make your own way, because my mother did. She, through force, faith, determination, she made it. And she made it on her terms.
Yeah.
As she said, the only person she ever had to please was her husband.
Oh, that's so sweet. And just for us as mothers and women who want to know more and want to get to know her better, what would be maybe her one or two books, what would be a most important resource for us to learn more about her? Where would you steer us?
Well, there are two biographies that were written about her, and both biographies are quite good. One is a more personal biography called The Sweetheart of the Silent Majority, and the other one is a historian's biography of her called Phyllis Schlafly and Grassroots Conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
And both are very accessible and approachable.
Mm-hmm.
My mother did write a whole bunch of books on a whole bunch of topics.
Mm-hmm.
I think the military books are probably a little, well, of their time, maybe a little dense.
Yeah. What is there one speech or something of her writing or creation that you think best represents her?
Well, and we have it, we put together a website to counter the fictional drama that FX is putting on called
great.
MrsAmerica.org. And at MrsAmerica.org,
mm-hmm.
we have compiled a lot of the good videos that she did. And probably the one that is the best to watch is called Doing the Impossible, where she recounts in her own words the fight on the Equal Rights Amendment.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect. I'm excited about that. If you have a few more minutes, we do have a few questions.
I love questions.
Okay. All right. I wrote a few down that came in earlier. And if you have time, we'll see. The chat has just been going crazy. They're all chatting like crazy with each other. I know you probably can't see it, but there's just a lot of wonderful, flattering things about you and about her. So this is a question that came in from Sarah. She said, do you think that as a child, all of the time that your mother was investing into her political activism was taking away time with you? Or did she wait until you were older to start that mission? You did address this a little bit. I'm not sure how old you were when things really ramped up, but she followed it up by saying it's hard to know when is the right time to pursue those outside interests. So what would you say to Sarah?
I'm sure you're right. It is, as for a parent, it is hard to know, to balance that. And there always comes a point where the child is, as you know, as we were, more interested in our own thing than we are hanging around our parents. There's a problem with helicopter parents, right?
Yes, totally.
But my mother was a very engaged mother, and there was no question that she, paid a lot of attention to her children.
Yeah.
And, I certainly remember at one point, and maybe it was about 8th grade, when, she wanted to help me with my homework. And I think the help was a little bit too much, and I ended up getting an A on the piece. And I thought to myself, I don't feel any sense of accomplishment for myself.
Yes.
And so I don't think I made sure she never helped me again, because it doesn't seem right for that. And I think there's a point where you have to become your own person and out there. Now, the ERA fight went on from, I guess, started when I was about 8 and then went to 18. So that was the range of the 10-year battle on it.
Yeah.
And so, as I said, I was there answering the phone and part of it, but I was also in school.
Did you feel at the time like she communicated well with you why it was important? Did you have a sense of the importance of her work? Did that help you to support her?
Yes, because my mother was a talker, and my mother talked all the time. So you were never in doubt of what she was thinking, feeling, believing at any given time. She talked it. And one of the rules that she always had in our family was the family dinner at 6 o'clock every night, no matter what. We sat down for dinner at 6 o'clock and we talked.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. Sandy had a question about, and maybe this is for the time with the ERA, but also for today. She says, what alternatives were there to create our equality for women? Did the feminist movement help or harm single mothers?
Well, I think there have always been alternatives, and the problem with the feminist movement is creating a culture that you are a victim and oppressed. and it's a mindset, and that's what my mother fought against, is to say optimistic and you can achieve more rather than claiming victimhood. In the mid 1960s, there were a number of laws passed that were quite beneficial to the advancement of women, including, for instance, Equal Pay for Equal Work Act of 1963. That's how long that's been around. So in the 1970s, when this argument came up of ERA, my mother kept asking, well, what benefits would it give? And it actually give any new benefits that women didn't already have or already achieve. So there's no, benefit out there for it.
Yeah. Oh, great. Carolina said, I was a feminist before embracing Christianity, and then I felt I didn't need it. Basically, I shortened up her question, it was a little longer, but basically because the issues were handled in her faith. She felt that Christianity managed some of the equality of the sexes better. But she said, how did your mother's Christian faith influence her involvement in the opposition of the ERA? You've said a little bit about this, if you have anything else to add.
Well, her faith was very crucial to it. And her faith that men and women were inherently biologically different with different goals, because women have babies and men don't. And women want to nurture their babies, and women want protection and security for their babies. All of those played a role into saying, this is why men and women are not interchangeable in every situation.
Here's another one. This is from Nina. She says, I believe in some of the positive things that the feminist movement has brought about, but I believe it's been twisted and distorted. How do we join the movement today and stand up for human rights and women's rights without getting caught up in the twisted and corrupt parts of the movement?
Well, I guess we have to go back to the question of, is the feminist movement a positive or a negative in our lives? And if you look at the movement of the 1970s, it was a negative movement for most women. And the famous line from the 1970s, it was actually often ascribed to Gloria Steinem, but I heard her speak once that she didn't actually originate it. But the line was, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. And I think telling and pushing women that men are irrelevant in their lives hurts a lot of us who not only want to get married, we are married, we enjoy our successful marriage, and being married is a huge part of our happiness in life. And I think when you're all said and done at the end of your life, if you have had a happy, successful marriage, it's the most important accomplishment that you have, because it provides so much satisfaction in your life. And the feminists of the 1970s effectively wanted to ban and erase men from women's lives. And that is, well, it's certainly not what I wanted. And I think for a lot of women, getting married to a wonderful man is a goal that is desirable.
Yeah. And, the corollary to that, a byproduct of that too, has been that then what gets communicated is that dads aren't important in children's lives. Right. And so then, you try to erase the whole family, and that steals joy from everyone. And we don't even meet each other's needs in that way.
The best indicator of success for a child in such areas as education is an intact family. That they're more likely to graduate high school and graduate college if they come from an intact family.
All right. Do we have other questions? Do you have other questions for Anne before we finish up? I wrote down the ones that I had found in the group. I can scroll through here and see if there were some that came up earlier. I was paying really close attention. You're right, Sarah. In the end, the Equal Rights Amendment was not ratified, so it was never ratified.
We should clarify. It failed ratification.
Yes.
And the reason that we're just talking about it today is because they're trying to bring it back. They pushed it through in a couple of states recently. It's not a legal thing. There's now litigation in several states, which will have to be eventually decided by the Supreme Court. But ultimately, when we amend our Constitution, it should be something that a supermajority of Americans want, not something just pushed through under the dark of night.
Right. So you're saying this show is part of that media movement to bring the Equal Rights Amendment.
And the producers have said that is part of their purpose.
Oh, wow. They've even said that.
Oh,
Sarah, wow, that's amazing. Sarah asked the question, how did the show come about and who approved it?
Well, nobody approved it. I haven't seen the show. I've asked FX to
Yeah.
I've attempted to contact them, the producers, and they have no interest in talking to me. They have no interest in learning the truth. They came to this subject matter with their minds already made up as to what the characters would be.
Wow. That's crazy. All right. Let me scroll back down here. Do you have any resources for slandering? Sarah, I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
I think what she means is whether slander and defamation would be, could I use that?
Do you have any recourse? I thought it said resources. Do you have any recourse for slandering?
So, unfortunately, when someone is dead, you can't defame a dead person. They're dead. I have noticed over the years, many times attacks and vicious attacks happen to people once they die, because then the attackers know they can get away with it, because there is no recourse other than the history books to when someone is attacked after they die. They're not there to speak up for themselves. Yeah. So that's why I am so pleased at the number of women who knew Phyllis are speaking up to say, this is the Phyllis I knew. So on our website, mrsamerica.org, we have all kinds of testimonials from, my friend Phyllis and how she helped me and who she was, because that's the pushback, is to say they got it wrong. They missed it. Her story is a great story. Yeah. Too bad they missed it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I'll just tell the moms that are here with us. Next week, I was going to announce this at the beginning of the week. Next week, we'll be back here talking to Gail Ruzicka, who I am so excited to interview. Found out from Anne, I knew she knew Anne, but turns out that not only is she good friends with Anne, but was very close friends with Phyllis. So she may be able to give us a friend's perspective on Phyllis, as well as telling us her story, because she's definitely a mission-driven mom that we can learn from. And she's an amazing woman. Mm-hmm. So we have the question, who was Kate Millett?
Yes. Kate Millett was part of the feminist movement in the early 70s. I'm trying to remember the name of the book that she wrote that got such a big publicity. But her story, you should really read her sister's story. Her sister, Valerie Millett, and that is on our website, mrsamerica.org.
Oh, nice.
It's Valerie Millett's story of her sister, Kate. And it is fascinating because Mallory draws the destruction of feminism through the life of her sister, Kate.
Is Kate the one that was from England and lived alone later in life? And I don't know if I have.
No, I think you're thinking of Germaine Greer. Kate Millett was actually, I think, from Minnesota.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so they're asking for, and this came to my mind as well. You were saying, we don't have legal recourse, but what we can do is let the truth about Phyllis be told now and move forward. So you have your website. This is Nicole asking, let's see, no, it's further up. Anyway, they were asking, what are some other resources that we could use to educate friends and family and other people that they know?
Well, certainly
it says, give us some ways to educate the public, sharing the website, et cetera. What else could they do?
Sharing the website, sharing, obviously we are engaged in social media on story of Phyllis Schlafly. I did, and this was kind of fun. I published last month her favorite recipes. It's a Phyllis Schlafly cookbook because I want to. She was a human being, and I want to humanize her because Hollywood has a different view, and they're not making her into a human.
Yeah.
And so she loved to, she had all kinds of great recipes. So we've got that available.
Oh, that's awesome. I remember that on one of the videos it showed when she was running for office, they came to the house and took a picture of her with her apron on cooking. They caught her in the middle of making dinner for her husband. And she's like, okay, well, that's the picture you want, I guess.
So when my mother ran for Congress in 1952, as I said, this was a heavily Democratic district and she was kind of a put up candidate, but her slogan was, a woman's place is in the House, the U.S. House of Representatives.
Oh, that's why they had the picture of that. Okay, so here's another question. Why the push and what rights are they missing? I'm not sure I understand your question, Nicole.
Why are they pushing for ERA today?
Oh, it says one of the pushes is the LGBTQ rights. One of the videos I watched of her made it sound as if they have all the rights they need basically and should not benefit from family rights. So I don't know if you have anything to say to family rights. I guess I'm not exactly sure what she's asking.
Well, certainly because, as I mentioned, the Equal Rights Amendment talks about sex.
Yeah.
Sex includes LGBTQ and who knows what else.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Sarah. Could women have gotten the right to vote and the right to work after being married, the right to be other than secretary or school teacher without the feminist movement?
Yes, because they already had. I mean, if there were many successful women did things, well before the feminist movement. It wasn't, the feminist movement didn't need to do that. My grandmother was employed as a librarian for the St. Louis Art Museum. As I said, she had an advanced degree. If women wanted to achieve, they certainly could.
Yeah, one of the debates between Phyllis and Betty, she was talking about, I'm in law school, nothing bars women from getting any kind of education they want or having the career that they want. And that was one of her arguments, many of the different ones that were against the Equal Rights Amendment. And then Betty made a comment about, well, it's going to keep, women, there are certain schools women can't get into. And Phyllis kept saying, what school? Name me a school. And she wouldn't name one. She began pressing her to name a school. And Betty, of course, had no recourse for what Phyllis was stating, because clearly, factually, it was.
In the 1970s, there were schools that were sex segregated. We don't have sex segregated schools today, but there certainly were a lot more sex segregated schools in the 1970s. And there were people who wanted to go to either all male or all female schools.
Right.
There are only a handful of those that exist today.
Yeah. Let's see if there's any other questions. You're so sweet and patient to stay on with us and answer all of our questions.
What else are we all doing? We're all stuck at home, right?
I called Gail to ask her if I could interview her next week, and she's like, well, this is a good time. We don't have a lot going on. She's, of course, very busy with what she can be busy virtually, but yeah, we do have more time right now, which is wonderful. It's a great time to hunker down and learn more. I don't see any other questions for you. Again, we've got the website has all kinds of resources for us.
It does. And we haven't, I want to follow up with the question that someone asked of what can I do?
Yes, great.
Eagle Forum exists today and Eagle Forum is thriving. And I invite you to join because I think of us as a powerful member-driven organization that does influence the policy maker.
Yes. Yeah, Kim just asked, you might have joined us a little bit late, Kim. Anne is the chairman of Eagle Forum. She's wondering if any of your siblings help with any of that as well.
And I'm the only family member in Eagle Forum, but I'm proud to work with women who worked with my mother. I mean, the two of our board members were with my mother when she founded the organization in 1970.
Oh my heavens, and they've been there that long?
Well, you know, grandmothers are pretty powerful people.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Let's see. Are there publications they can subscribe to
Yes.
to be more informed?
The Eagle Forum.
What would you recommend?
We have the Eagle Forum Report, which is a
Mhm.
monthly newsletter
Mhm.
that we mail out, and
Mhm.
I think it's I think it's great. Our issue this month is entitled "Who Owns Your Child's Face?" and how the big data are taking the pictures of children and exploiting them.
Wow. Yeah, there's that form when you sign up in school to give permission for any pictures taken in school to be able to be used. Yeah, you can.
It's
yeah.
difficult, but you should to protect
Yeah, you
the child.
should.
Mhm.
Let's see. Are there, let's see. Oh, there's so much activity. There's so many questions. Yes, Sarah, we'll go back through and make a list of the biographies and the website and the publications that Anne has recommended for sure.
And we talk about them on our website, mrsamerica.org too.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. And I think they also mean being better educated. I mean, the school systems haven't done them any service. And that is something that at the Mission Driven Mom, we do work on as well. But I think they're wanting to have trusted resources to hear about, political issues and to be informed and educated in a better way.
Oh, yes, so, absolutely.
Julia asked if there's any podcasts that you recommend.
Well, the Eagle Forum podcast.
Oh, is there one? Oh, there you go.
We have a podcast called Engage with Eagle Forum.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And do you how does that one work? Is that you speaking, other people, guests?
I have been on it, but it's actually done by two women who work in our Washington office.
Mm-hmm.
Kristen Hasler and Tabitha Walter are the hosts of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they've interviewed a lot of very interesting people and taken on a lot of interesting subjects. And of course, podcasts are having their moment in the sun right now.
Oh,
so
seriously. Yeah, for sure.
But it's called Engage with Eagle Forum.
Engage with Eagle Forum.
Yes.
Is the feminist movement responsible for the fact that we can no longer have organizations that cater to one sex or the other? For example, the Boy Scouts, this organization used to cater to the needs of only boys.
Well, I think there are a number of reasons that the Boy Scouts have had some troubles. And the Boy Scouts taking girls, well, the Girl Scouts immediately objected. And I think there was there litigation on that between the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts? I think there are times if people want to be in an organization that is only men or only women or only boys or only girls, who are we to say you can't have your organization?
I know. Absolutely. Well, I don't see any new questions, Anne. You've given us a lot of your time today.
It is my pleasure to be.
Oh, it was our pleasure to meet you and spend time with you. We'll definitely look into these resources and start subscribing and sharing out. I've been encouraging the moms to share out this event. What's great about our group is it's shareable. So they can actually share out the event all over Facebook, and then we can share it out through podcast as well and share the resources.
Well, good. Like and tag Eagle Forum so we can follow along also.
Oh, great. Yes, I will. We'll do that for sure. We'll put that in the comments. The moms are saying thank you, that you've been very gracious and they've learned a lot, and they want me to tell you thank you for being with us this afternoon. It was a joy to meet you. I can see why Gail loves you so much. So.
Thank you so much, Audrey.
Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.